when you make a down payment, what percentage do you do? And so I understand FHA loans will say you can do like 3.5%, and then I read some statistic recently. They said that typical new homeowners are doing 5%, and then typical second home buyers are doing 10%. But then I always hear that 20% is sort of the golden rule. What's your standard, assuming you have some flexibility in decisions? What's your go-to down payment?
Yeah, I mean, if you'd asked me this question maybe 10 years ago, it might have been a different answer because of the way the housing market was working.
Mm.
But so if you get a personal loan on a property you're moving into, you can get an FHA loan. And that means that the percentage, for your down payment can be significantly lower. It's down to 3.5%. But you could put in anything you want above that. That's totally fine. But you have to remember, too, that, the lower percentage you go, the more that property is going to cost you per month. So that's, a consideration. However, the reason it would have been different 10 years ago was that if you could cover like all the costs like we talked about in your first question with the least amount of down payment humanly possible, then your return on investment is significantly higher. For example, like if you put $100 down, I'm just going to use $100, not that that makes sense in properties, but if you put $100 down on a property and then you can cash flow $100 a year, your return on investment is 100% every year, right? Whereas if you put a down payment down of $10,000 and your returns every year are $200, yeah, your returns are higher, but your down payment was also significantly higher, so your return on investment is significantly lower. And what that means is like you want to put in as least amount of cash as possible, and you want to get back as much amount of cash as possible, and that ROI kind of there's like a balance somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. Where you put down enough down payment and you can get enough cash flow, and wherever that balance is kind of where you want to be. The reason I say that it's different today is because I don't know what the housing market's doing today, right? So yeah, I think that over the next 30 years it will be the same as it's always been, right? So for the long-term game, it's going to be the same as it's always been. But we're seeing declines now in the entire nation. So I did an episode a while back where I said San Jose, the Bay Area is declining, and people commented like, well, of course the Bay Area is declining. Those people are crazy, which is absolutely true. But now we're seeing declines over the whole country, and we're somewhere around between 5 and 10% decline. And I think that, the Federal Reserve just announced another 0.75% increase in interest rates, and they've said they're going to do this again. All right. And so I have a feeling that we're going to see some more declines. And if that's the case, you don't want to ever be upside down on your loan. You don't want to be in a position where you owe more on the property than the property is actually worth. Right. That's how Dave Ramsey got in trouble back in the late 70s when the housing market flipped on him. He owed way more than the values of the property. So if it's your first property and you're a little bit nervous about it, I would say that don't worry about ROI as much. Be maybe a little bit more on the conservative side. And, as you kind of figure this out, then maybe get a little bit more risky about it, right? Because the experience and the knowledge is going to change the risk factor for you, right? So right now the risk factor is high. You have no experience, no knowledge. You've never done this. You don't know what it looks like. So because of that, maybe a higher down payment. If I was to do it today, I would probably be putting down 25% on a property. Not because I think that the market's going to dip below that 25% marker, but because I said in the video I suspect it's going to be 15 to 20, and that gives me a buffer. And I could be totally wrong, and the worst case scenario is like, oh, I'm totally wrong, and whoops, I accidentally went too conservative, right? So yeah, I think right now I would go on the higher side. But sorry, I'm making this answer really long.
That's a good answer.
The other side too is if you are looking at personal stuff, as we started, like if you're looking to buy the property and move into it yourself, that changes some of the risk factor a little bit too, because you could stay in it longer and wait for the market to kind of flip, right? That's an option too. So like if you can put 3.5% down and you stay in it and it does dip below, well, as long as you're comfortable with, your emergency funds and your backups, your ability to produce income, that's not really as much of a risk. So if it was a personal property I'm moving into where I plan on turning it into an investment property later, then yeah, maybe I'd go lower. Maybe somewhere around 10 between 5 and 10 possibly. But that would be like, I'd have to know that I could stay in that property until the market, flipped and went the other direction.